Breaking news coming out of the NBA. Spurs head coach Gregg Popovich is out indefinitely with an undisclosed health issue. That's according to ESPN. The five-time champion suffered that health issue prior to Saturday's win over the Timberwolves. Assistant coach Mitch Johnson is expected to serve as the team's interim head coach until Popovich is ready to return to the action. He took over for Pop on Saturday and will be in charge once again later tonight against the Clippers. That Saturday game was a win for the Spurs, who sit currently at 3-3 on the year. Maybe a revelation, one of the surprises we've seen with that new look San Antonio team having Chris Paul and picking up some other pieces along the way to be slightly more competitive than they were last year. And now they will move forward with Mitch Johnson at the helm. For how long, we do not know, but Gregg Popovich will not be there for right now. We're now bringing our coach, Avery Johnson. And, Coach, I know how much love you have for San Antonio, how much love you have for the franchise. You see and hear this news about Popovich, 75 years old. Do you know anything maybe inside about the health that he's dealing with and maybe how we can move forward from here?
2 weeks ago, when the Spurs came to Dallas, Pop and I had appetizers together, and he was perfectly fine. We spent about 90 minutes together, no health concerns. He looked good, he sounded good, he was moving well. We went for a little walk together. We ran into some of the Spurs players and talked to those guys. So this is quite a surprise from the Popovich that I had a chance to spend some time with about 2 weeks ago.
Spurs saying that Popovich did not travel with the team for this trip out west to LA and to Houston. But you think about the Spurs sitting at 3-3. How much does he mean to this franchise, and how will they be able to play without him for a team that's been, pretty solid this year, you could say?
Well, when you've been coaching with a franchise for 20 plus years, and somebody else takes the interim job forever, no matter how long he's going to be in that seat, it's just a different voice. Fortunately for the Spurs, they've acquired some veteran players that can help with some of these young guys because it's still a relatively young team if you take Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul off of this team. So it's just a different voice. We'll see if they keep the same exact system or whether the interim coach is going to, deploy some of his new tactics with this team. I've been in this situation before when Don Nelson had to step away for health reasons, and I became the interim coach for 10 games. Fortunately, we went, 7-3 or 8-2, and Don Nelson ended up retiring or resigning at the end of the season. But we'll see if this is how indefinite this situation is. Is it a season-long deal, or is it going to be for a couple of weeks? At this point, I haven't talked to Coach Pop. But I'm curious to find out what's going on with him from a health situation.
Yeah, certainly hoping a speedy recovery, that he'll be able to return to the team sooner than later. And you look at the Spurs right now with where they are in the Western Conference, the schedule over, say, the next 10 games, not unbelievably taxing. But what did you maybe think the Spurs would be going into the year, and how do you feel about them now that they're 6 games in and sitting at 500?
This is not, when you play 6 games in an hour, 7 games, you can really get an idea of where you are. But 6 games into an 82-game season, I don't think you can read much into what's happening. Obviously, except for a team like the Thunder, a team that wants to go to the Western Conference Finals, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was in the MVP race. But it's just really too early. You got teams like the Milwaukee Bucks that have only won 1 game. And this was a team that was 30-13 last year when they fired their head coach. And now they barely can win a game. So does that mean they're not going to make the playoffs? Or are they going to squeak in the play-in tournament, which would be a disappointment for that franchise? So it's just really too early.
The Spurs that starts tonight in LA with the Clippers. Then they have Houston on Wednesday before they return back home. But we do know, at least for this road trip right here, Gregg Popovich is not with the team as he is out for those undisclosed health reasons. Our coach, Avery Johnson, thank you so much for the time. We always appreciate it, and taking a closer look at that schedule that's coming up for the Spurs. 4-5 straight home games with the Blazers, Jazz, Kings, Wizards, and Lakers. All probably winnable games because you don't get a team above 500 until that date on November 15th against the Lakers and at the Mavs on November 16th.